So this is a, I feel like I say this, but I always mean it. But when you meet someone in your life that truly transforms you, and we always say we're a sister from another mother, right? Well, Sungjoo Kim is truly my sister. We look alike, right?
But a different hair color.
And Sungjoo is, you know, I've told the story, so for whoever's been here for the last couple of days will have heard the story, but I want to tell it again, and then I'm going to go to Suzanne. But I want to talk about how a minute of an experience can truly lead to a lifetime of change. And that's when Sungjoo showed up in the Equality Lounge 2 years ago. And it was quite remarkable for me because here was this person that kept popping in. I did not know who she was. I did not have time to chit-chat because we were packed. And finally, by day 3, I said, I don't know who you are, but you seem so interesting, so curious, and someone with so much power for change. I'd love to interview you. And she said, of course. And at the same time, I had Mike Perlis from Forbes that we were interviewing at the same time. And I said, would you mind if I interviewed you together? And Sungjoo said, no, absolutely. And Sungjoo told a story. Will you just quickly repeat your story?
Wow, okay. Actually, in Davos, 1997, or in fact, end of 1996, Davos informed me I was chosen as one of a young leader by that time, 21 years ago. I was much younger, of course, out of blue. So I said, how did you find my name? Because I'm Asian women, small, medium company owner, nobody. But they said, the selection committee at Davos saying, we read your article. Where? An airplane, Forbes magazine. So, okay, so because the Forbes magazine, at the June, one of those week issue, had a 3-page article about me. Well, how it happened, even also out of blue, like somebody in high level in Forbes who was visiting Korea, and that's just a random reception, and just found me there. There's a lady that I'm young, and the tycoon's daughter, but completely disowned because did not follow the traditional marriage. And she restarted her own company from scratch. And fighting through all this marriage chauvinism, geisha parties, it's just a mere way of doing all business in Asia typically. And now she started thriving. So they said, your case is so interesting. So when bureau chief of Tokyo called me, Forbes magazine, 1996, I thought they were mistaken. They said, oh, my father's office number you need because my father is tycoon of a big energy group in Korea. I said, no, it's you. I said, why? They said, yes, because your case seems very interesting. So they came and they interviewed me. So I thought they may come as just a little tiny article with a little picture in that. But in fact, it came at 3 pages with big picture. Title was Like Father, Like Daughter. So that article was the one how connect with the Davos people who are traveling to Asia. They read this article. This woman is interesting. Investigate about my background. They informed you are one of the global leaders tomorrow. That's how it came out. So Forbes said it's amazing.
It was remarkable because we say there's no such thing as coincidence. And so here I have Sungjoo and Mike, they're sitting there, and Sungjoo turns to Mike and says, thank you. Thank you so much for featuring the story. Mike didn't know Sungjoo, but they just had this embrace, and he still talks about that moment today. And for me, the impact that you have on me every single day, even though we live very, very far apart, I will never, never forget that one moment that changed my life. So thank you for being such an important part of my life.
Your presence in my life too. Thank you, being my big sister. Well, younger sister, but big presence in my life. Thank you.
And then, for Suzanne, today we're going to talk about a really important topic. And, Sungjoo already said, back there about female leadership. First, tell who you are and what you do. Let's start with that.
Okay, so my name's Suzanne Kounkel. I'm a partner at Deloitte. I currently lead our high-tech industry practice, which is the industry vertical for us that has all the social hardware and software companies, which obviously is a big driver of growth for the company. And I was just asked about a month ago to be the CMO of Deloitte Consulting, so I will assume, thank you, those responsibilities. June 1, thank you very, very much. And just a couple of other things that inform kind of who I am today. I had the privilege of, for about 7 years, I was what we called our Women's Initiative leader for 3 different CEOs in the firm. And that's a little bit of a foreshadowing of something I think she's going to ask later. And then I also was on the U.S. Consulting Board for about 8 years. I'm married to a Kiwi named Simon, and we have a 9-year-old son. So that's me.
So let's start with that because, I shared a story with you from when I met Barry Salzberg and, what he had said to me. And, so how are we doing with women in leadership at Deloitte? Let's start with that.
Yeah, and my good friend Terry Cooper's in the back, who leads inclusion for the firm. So we are doing, I think everything's relative, right? So at Deloitte, we are very lucky on a lot of fronts, but we, so several things that we've done exceptionally well. We have a 0, what we call a gender turnover gap. So if you look at men and women leaving the firm, we do not have disparity between the rates at which our men and women are leaving the firm.
At every level?
At every level.
Including mid-level?
Yeah, which has been a big position of us because that has not historically been the case. That was actually the first problem we were trying to solve. And then
amazing, by the way. Kudos.
Right. The second thing is that we also have equal pay. And we do a lot of work. And again, Terry does a lot of work in her current position to make sure that is the case. So that's fabulous. Our challenges are really around succession and career trajectory. And what we've found is that at the moment we make those decisions, we're making good decisions. But it's the year before that and the year before that when people are getting exposure to the right projects or the right roles or the right opportunities, that's where we have historically fallen down a bit and have needed to really push through that so that when our women do get to a certain level, they're prepared and ready to go.
So Sung-Joo, from your perspective, I think you are the most prominent female leader in Seoul for sure, but not Asia? Is that correct? You could brag. We never brag about ourselves.
Little subtle, yes. Yes.
I think that's correct, right? So do you feel that there's a difference between male and female leadership?
Well, it should be. First of all, actually, not beside the Forbes magazine, at the Fortune magazine, maybe about 10, 12 years ago, I can't remember, maybe less than 10 years ago, I was selected one of the 20 most vibrant CEOs, men and women together, because it was unusual. Because not because I'm big, because of something unusual. Because if you put in the cultural context, how difficult it is. Because born in big family, just because of women even coming from the same mother and father, and brothers, 3 brothers I have, they are subject to inherit multi-billion-dollar energy tycoon business. Meanwhile, girl, regardless how smart you are. In fact, my age, I'm actually quite old. My era, women being smart is something.
If anyone knew,
By the way, I look older than she does, but
exactly.
No, we haven't revealed our age yet. We'll talk about
That'll be towards the end.
But the thing is,
my
ancient time really. Like I remember when I was in junior high school, I happened to get the first grade in my whole entire class. I brought in this scorecard to my father very proudly. His face, instead of being proud, he was grim look. I said, why? Oh my God, another smart girl. How can we matching her to another man? Because Asian men then don't like the intelligent girls because harder to control. I thought, oh my God. So that moment really discouraged me so much. Being smart is simple, something guilty. So I tried to lose it out. But
tried to hide it.
That's right. And so even when I started my own company, eventually out of rebellion, of course, but even standing in front of my company team, I was trembling because I felt like I was doing something wrong. Being leader as women as a leader is something wrong. So it took like a few decades to overcome it. still somewhere in my mind there. But going back to the men and women leadership, for me, I mean, just let's jump a little bit. Now we are in Davos, and we talk about how we can restore it's a fractured world. For me, the solution is women's leadership. Because if we are going to be just at the same level with the men and women kind of a competition, I think it's becoming a little bit passé. Because now, even I remember there's one session I was in, Bloomberg session, the CEO of Uber was there. One lady challenged him, Uber has a real diversity balance or gender balance there. He said, yes, this is one of our primary tasks that we have to overcome, and from boardrooms to working level, whatever. But after the session, I went up to him. It's not marketing piece. It is not even compulsory piece. It is a competitiveness piece. Because when you talk about this Uber service, eventually they will face many, many competitors in future. And what matters difference? Even as a woman, actually, even my daughter, she hang out in hang out at night and calling the Uber and taking. But which man is driving? Is she gonna be safe? Immediately, I think that way. And even there's some incident there too. So I'm not blaming anything Uber. What I'm saying is any industry, any companies, now they don't take on women's leadership, not only marginal, middle level, top level in both rooms. I think the future is really competitive, whether women's is this emotional conscience, even in terms of detail or at the service level, and don't coming in, then there's no competitiveness. So for me, what the difference we can make? I think women, it's not which is better and wrong, less. I think we have different strengths. I think so. Especially we are converting from 20th century and 21st century. Certainly, we live in the modern era. Bill Gates mentioned if the capitalism going this way will destroy ourselves. But he's proclaiming about the creative capitalism. For me, in fact, that's what women should take on leadership. So what is creative capitalism about? I think that Bill Gates mentioned about, we don't wait, government do something, or a big company will do something. Any company leader we just take on to share, to correct, to repair, to improve the society. That's what our current entrepreneurs, leaders should do. For me, women's quality, because we are caring, healing, this fractured world. So for me, I think women's leadership is not only skills that we have to build up based on our strengths, but we have to go beyond. I think very value-driven, and really really bring this fractured world together under trust. I think that's what women's leadership quality about, from my point of view.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, and we're working collectively on a study about leadership, and that is one of the great findings, is that there are definitely, feminine elements to it as well as masculine. And the notion that either a purely masculine or a purely feminine leadership model is the strongest is incorrect, right? The balance of the two is what, but for sure, the leadership model for so many years has been weighted on the masculine side. And today's world, I think, just is, begging for a lot of the feminine characteristics around the inclusion and the listening and the, soft skills and the collaboration and all that sort of thing, which I think is fabulous.
And I think you guys coined it soft power, right? Which is really so true. When you look at leadership of the past versus what's required today, they really are very different qualities. And ultimately, I think it ladders up to caregiving, qualities, nurturing and empathy and collaboration.
Can I add up something? When I started really from zero, nothing, no money, no infra, no human resource around, no really supporting group around, especially in Korea or in Japan, as you know, it's very Confucius, summarism, or in a very macho environment. And so I said, okay, when I face real world, dealing with the commercial activity, whatever, unless you bring them out of the geisha party, heavy drinking party, sometimes bribing, corruption included, you cannot move any bit around. And also, I remember when I went in for real dinner kind of gathering, and because I was the only CEO beside geishas, therefore, they really tried to humiliate me by any means, like verbal sexual harassment, you can imagine. So embarrass me, kick me out of that league. So that kind of is a real challenge every day I was facing. But top of that, as I said, corruption. So I came back home. I had a little child already bring up, is it worthwhile So should I do something similar with what they're doing? And also, should I do also cheat text to bribe them to make my commercial activity more lucrative? This was common practice that time. I said, well, this should be some new mission I should take on. First of all, why don't I be a little more creative instead of lamenting about it? So how can I be creative? So instead of looking at the negative side of what I was facing, I tried looking at more positive side in a sense that, well, by the end, consumers are women. Majority consumers are women, especially in Asia. 70-80% of all the household consumption is determined by women. And now even these days more because they get into even internet. So e-commerce is more dominated by women also. So I said, because we know the end users' needs so well, so why don't we open a little more market volatility and competition, whatever? So let's be more attentive for that. And second, how we can really implement in our strategy and all the process doing it. And more so important here is why don't we be one of the first IT adapter? Because we are the smaller player. So how can we compete with those giants around? No way to compete with a scale game, but why don't it be speedier and accurate game? So we are even early 90s, we are one of the first 8 IT adapter as a small medium company. IBM 400 make whole the process much more faster and accurate, and we won the market. So,
and that requires you believing in yourself and being brave to not conform to the boys' club, but to truly create your own rules and hope that others would follow. And I just have to say, I went to Seoul, Korea, to visit Sungjoo Kim, and I literally went for, I think, a day because I really wanted to be in your world and surrounded by your girlfriends. And it was so remarkable because all of Sungjoo's girlfriends, they hosted me for dinner, and the stories that they shared, the camaraderie, it was really a girls' lounge. It was girlfriends supporting other girlfriends. And I remember the story. You made a toast, and you said, and this was about a year ago, but I will never forget your toast, and you said it so eloquently, so I am not going to repeat it word for word, but the gist was that you had to break a lot of rules, be yourself. You were not accepted as one of the top leaders in the world in Asia into the boys' club, and you had 2 options: one, to be yourself, or to conform, and you chose to be yourself. And all of your girlfriends said how much they admire you, and you inspire them every single day to be who they are, and I will never forget that.
Thanks. So
it was really amazing. Sungjoo sent her hair and makeup person to my room, and I came to dinner, and if you look, my eyes look like yours. I look quite good. I'll show you all the pictures. It was really fun. But I want to go back to that voice in your head. For anyone that's been in any of our lounges, we always talk about we have that voice in our head telling us what we can and we can't do. And Ariana Huffington says, it's called the obnoxious roommate. And our girlfriend, Wendy Clark says, shut that bitch up and make it go away and follow your heart instead of your head. What advice do you give to yourself, Suzanne, when you have that voice telling you that you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not good enough, you're not, qualified? What do you do?
Yeah, so I usually remind myself of a couple of things, right? And the first one is, people are watching. And every time I forget that, someone reminds me. So for women in particular, I think if you can't do it for yourself, it's oftentimes easier if you think about others to do it on their behalf. And that's been a way to kind of keep up the courage, right? Is that there are others that are watching to see what happens, and it's important for us to take. I always joke about. I was on a flight one time, and the pilot said, we're going to get there safely, and we were going through turbulence, all that sort of thing. And he said, I really care about you, your important customers, and he said, and I actually really want to get this plane safely there because I'm on it, right? And so I think about that, right? We're the pilots of this plane, right? And so if we can't get the plane there safely, the people behind us don't have any chance of getting there safely either. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I always remind myself that why I'm here and why I'm in the roles I am is recognition than what They want what I brought to the table, which wasn't what they saw in others. So that's an important piece to it as well. And then, the third thing is, I think just really being true to yourself and being stepping back and not saying how would others do it, but how would I do that, and being true to that, because it's easier in the long run. To be honest, it takes a lot of energy not to do it that way. And again, that's why people have you where you are, is because of you. So take advantage of it. You are the best you. So take advantage of that.
That's great.
Well, just one of my reverend actually said, we all have a lot of anxiety. Every day we say, do this or not, especially women, because we are emotional beings. Actually, somebody said the biggest enemy is in you. When you don't display emotion, that will kill you. That will make you very coward. That will make it weaken you, really. I think this is our natural, the way we are born. But so that's why I envy men going military service. I wish I could go on because you could have training go beyond your limit. But when you have facing such a situation, in fact, every moment, every day, you are facing that situation in a small and big decision. But my little advice is, because why are we anxious about those? Because we are afraid of a failure, making mistake. Especially girls trained that way. Because we always, especially me, like coming from such a traditional Asian background, we are treated like a secondary citizenship. Therefore, more complex, more inferior kind of position we were kind of embedded in our head. So I've been fighting through. So one thing I learned from this even Reverend saying, well, there's a lot of challenge around the world, anxiety in our mind. 97% are not happening, but we are too much anxious about it, especially at night when you sleep. Worries become amplified. But so 97% of our worries are not going to be realizable, and 2% are manageable, and 1% at the God's hands. Why do you worry? That's my first advice. And second is, even really, that is great. And secondly, also, when you are facing do it or not because of failure, you are not attempting. For instance, like when I rebelled against my parents not marrying into another billionaire power marriage through arrangement and going my own sweetheart, I knew next day I would be disowned. They already clearly warned me for that. But I stood up because for me, hey, first I was young enough. Second, I haven't pushed my margin enough, how far I can go by myself, confidence building. Third is real failure is not. You did something, the outcome is not expected what you want to. Real failure is we have only one life. If you don't pursue what you want, regardless of failure or not, you never attempted. That's real failure, not in life. So now, if anybody asks me, all this agonist difficulty you went through, because, as I said, we look very glitzy here, right? High up, good company, and exposure looks pretty decent. But what kind of a failure and mistakes and difficulties, even personal health issues to family issues, you cannot imagine. But we've been through. Because when you have such a conviction that, each being has a born in the earth by some reason, for me, it's a God's purpose in our life. I think our task is not what kind of figure we are going to be abstract way at all. How can I realize somebody who sent from heaven to earth, like me, my being, with the strength and weakness, failure and success, happiness and every ingredient, we like it the same. When snow comes, it comes on me. Rain comes, it comes. Sunshine, they are indiscriminate. Very, everybody really facing all these things. But one thing true is stick with your conviction, believe in you, but also believe in the purpose of who sent you to earth to deliver the purpose in your through your life. But more so, what I'm saying is really don't be afraid of failure, because you already attempt what you wanted. It's already half success. For me, of course, I face a lot of failure in business, personal level, whatever level. But I never. This is funny. One thing I really should share this. A lot of things happening externally, somewhat beyond your control. But one thing you can control over is how to face it. It's a mental attitude. So even detrimental failure I made, every level you can think about. But I say, instead of getting defeated and terrified and sad about and self-pity, that's a real failure. I say, hey, yes, I made a mistake, but what did I learn from it? How can I make this failure case to be my ingredient of a future success? Then actually most of my failure case became the blessing. That's what I want to share.
Yeah, that reminds me, one of the things that my father gave me, which I'm very, very appreciative is, and I hated it as a child. I really resented this. But my father always said, you have control, you can act, right? And the way this played out was I would come home from school and be crying, and I was, someone was mean to me, and they said something really, really bad, and I would talk to my father, who incidentally, which is part of the story, was the father of 4 girls. And so, oh, really?
I'm one of 4 girls.
Oh, that's interesting.
Tell me who it was. I'm going to go beat him up.
Yeah, so he would, thank you. And so he would look at me and he would say, okay, now what are you going to do? Like, what do you want to do? And I would be like, no. You're missing the point of this story. Remember, this is poor me. I'm crying, And he said, I know, but I'm not that person's father. So I can't control what that person did. I can only help you to act in a way going forward. And again, as a child, I hated that, but it has been something I've gone back to again and again and again.
And also one more, can I add up?
Yes,
This personal advice. Actually, my daughter, when she was 8 months old, she had a burn accident. She nearly died because I was away from business meeting, and I ended up at the emergency room. My daughter had a 25% third-degree burn. Doctor said she's not surviving. 8 months old, that's more. I thought such a guilty feeling. First of all, I was almost like give up my business because of me. My daughter is that accident facing. So I was crying. She was in coma a few days, and just the doctor could not treat much more, just waiting for until she died. But my mom walked in the emergency room. You know what she said? She's such a woman of a strong faith, in God. She said, "Why are you crying?" I thought my mom was mad, and you have to thank to God. I said, "What?" She said, "Because it didn't hurt her eyeballs, it didn't hurt her neck, and it didn't hurt her hands. Most critical part did not burn." Even though my daughter is in coma, dying stage, but she told me, "Be positive. And let's pray for God's miracle." So at that moment, I was really mad at mom. She was crazy, But now she was right. A few days after, with a heart prayer, and my daughter survived. Actually, next day I'm going to bring my daughter here. She's 28 years old.
She's amazing.
Super smart and super beautiful now.
She is. She's amazing. I want to tell you that story. Mother Ocean, I don't see her here, but she told me something very similar. You must meet Mother Ocean. She lives in Malaysia. I told her all about you. And what she said is, when you don't think positively, then all of the other things, if you think negatively, that affects everything inside of you. And negativity breeds negativity, and positivity breeds positivity. And so if you have a choice of going down the negative path or the positive path, always choose the positive, because it will find its own health. And that's, really what happens. So that's an incredible story. I want to get some questions, but I want to ask you a couple more questions. We talked about failure, and that, to me, you need to sometimes fail to succeed, and that means you're trying something that might not be so safe, but that takes you out of status quo-ness. What's your favorite failure?
Okay, I'm going to switch the... So the failure I learned the most from is an interesting one, because there have been a couple of times in my career where I've been so good at my current job that I made myself irreplaceable in that job, which meant that I could not move to the next job. And so there have been jobs that I've sat in too long. So really pay attention to that, is, kind of where you want to go. And I've learned from that. And the moral of the story, right, is make sure you set outcomes and then can say, I've done that, and therefore I should be, considered for the next role. And, one of the things, again, I talked about the fact that I was just named CMO. I really wasn't ready in terms of tenure, and I for sure wasn't ready in my head to take on this next role. When Janet came to me and asked me to consider taking on the role, and it made me realize how much I loved my current role, but I knew that I had fixed that previous failure because I'm, going on to the next thing before I'm really ready and before the tenure would say that I should be leaving my current role. So.
Well, I don't know whether failure we say favorable failure, but anyway, interesting failure. But actually, because we have time limit, I would just leave it on the business cases. 1998, when the financial crisis hit Asia, especially Korea, it was detrimental. So my company was not exception. That time, over those past few years, we were growing almost 100% growth, very prosperous economy. So I invest overly done with the borrowing money, whatever from bank. And so that was I don't say just arrogance, but because I was too easy to take on the trend without knowing what was coming up. It's like a storm. So I lost everything overnight when crisis hit. So at that time, I was a franchise of Gucci and some other luxury brands in Korean market. So one lesson really learned was don't be, how can I say, easy on your success. So that was a great lesson, but I did not get defeated. I said, okay, I lost everything, became zero again. At least I could save my team because I did a successful M&A to Gucci, so I could save my team's employment. So they're not laid off by Gucci at that time. So, but one thing, again, looking at the positive, what did I learn from Gucci? It was an amazing turnaround, brand transformation with the Ms. Deloitte and Tom Ford era. I was part of the strategy team. So I learned such amazing things, even monetary-wise, I lost it. So I revived my company. So that's how I bought MCM, which is a German brand, 2005. What I learned from Gucci, I applied exactly the same. So we start from zero. In global scale, only we had a licensed business for Korean domestic market. I said to my team, why don't we bring up this ailing global baby, German baby, out of Asian cradle? So now, 12 years' time, we are in 40 countries, 500 stores, more than becoming about $600 million business. It's not that bad. But last year, we had another failure. But last year, we had another kind of external failure, which is, the sad situation, geopolitical risk around the Northeast Asia. Chinese government stopped 8 million Chinese tourism coming to Korean market. Our duty-free business gone at once. So we lost $140 million at once, sales-wise. So it is another kind of external kind of factor made my company failed in certain sense. But luckily, first of all, our business in America, we have 160 sales of point of sales. Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus, I met actually Peter Nordstrom the other day. He said, we are fastest growing luxury. They want to build up next 3 years, $55 million alone, Nordstrom, for instance. So we are striving. But meanwhile, 140 million is still big money. You know what I told him? Instead of getting really panicking about it, I turned around, of course, deep breath, a lot of prayer. And then I turned around to my team, look, because everybody, oh my gosh, she's going to lay off. And I said, look, this is great wake-up call. Because we lived on such a lucrative, easy money flowing out of China to Korean duty-free. But now let's go more global. Let's go new kind of move, which is new kind of project, which is digital transformation. Don't forget, at this point I was sitting with the BCG team because we are team up. Because it's not just because women and men things. Future will be AI and non-AI issue. So women and men issue is gone now. And also, especially knowledge-based economy we live in fact, women's labor quality is much more thriving. So it's a matter of how quickly we can take on this leader. That's the only matter. But going back to this one, so digital transformation, we do it because in the global scale, for instance, we are going into Japan in a big way, where the LV brand, and doing 1.5 billion, and Gucci G brand doing 1.2 billion. We are just infant stage, only like 30, 40 million. It's just entering. How can you compete with that scale game? No way, because they are multi-billion dollar. They have everything from human infra, and they, easily comes $500 million for, advertising, PR, and they have everything. How would you compete as a small, medium, starting a company women owned? I say this is speed game, smart game, and also, I think the future brand is more branding and really community building, whatever. So for me, again, this failure became my wake-up call. You will see next few years, we'll strive again. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to take questions. Before we do that, one quick piece of advice for future leaders.
Okay. So I always say to people that ask three things and a little bit of a fourth thing, right? So one is be proud. You're where you're at for a reason. Operate from a base of strength. The second is be better. Always get yourself, if you're not nervous in a day, it means you haven't grown. So always put yourself in places where you're nervous, right? Be bold. Be different. Make sure that things are different when you're there and that people know that when you're in the room, something's different, right? It doesn't have to be about you, but it does have to be that there's a reason why you're there. And then the last thing that I always say is make sure you laugh often.
Well, future leader, what is future we're facing, especially our children's generation, very scary. This Davos, the subject, fractured world, terrorism, epidemic, and all this climate change. Just we are really leaving behind really awful world. So as a women leader, not only just striving for my own success, I think women's leadership should be something beyond that, value-driven, purpose-driven, restoring, healing. And for me, I would identify it as a steward leadership because we are born with a motherhood, which is so precious quality not many men has. Thank you.